good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the Tower at UNN. As always, I'm your host, Desire. Welcome to the Tower. And today we're, of course, going to be talking about the Muhoozi project, as that did not come to a halt, and the military state which we find ourselves in, because Uganda is a nation that has been captured by the military and sunk into ownership by the military and the people who own the arms for the military. But we do also have my co-host in the studio with me here today. Senior Chitu will be with us later on today. But before we get into the nitty-gritties of what we're going to be talking about and the details, we're going to go according to tradition, as we always do. First, we'll listen to the national anthem. Then we will hear some words from Senior Chintu when we come back from the national anthem. Then we will listen to today's state anthem. And today, for state anthem, we'll be listening to the state anthem of Acholi. So right now, I would like to ask the producer to please play the national anthem before we continue.
Oh, Uganda, may God uphold thee. We lay our future in thy hand. United, free, for liberty, together we'll always stand. Oh, Uganda, the land of freedom, our love and labor we give, and with neighbors all at our country's calling, peace and friendship will be.
Welcome back from the national anthem. At this point in time, I'd like to invite Senior Chintu to come and, greet our members in the audience, for those of you who are watching us or listening to us, as before we get into today's program.
Thank you very much, Desire. Greetings to all of you who are watching us today. Sorry we have come in a little bit late, but there are conditions which are inescapable. However, we are very happy that you are with us, and we are going to be looking at very important issues concerning our country, Uganda. Hopefully that you will learn something that we can put in practice and see how we can reclaim our stolen country. Thank you very much, and hopefully you will put up with us today.
Thank you so much, Senior, for that. And before we start, we'll now listen to Acholi State National Anthem. And then when we get back, we'll get into why we decided for that state anthem today and how it relates to the topic of militaria in Uganda and its construction in Uganda.
Wow.
Thank you so much for that, producer. Uh, so, Senior, before we get into today's topic, because today we're going to look at the military state in Uganda and current day, how it looks like now, versus whereby there needs to be an acknowledgement of where it was publicly orchestrated that we all knew, oh, Muhoozi project is now in action, and it has gone silent for a little bit, but it's not really silent because Muhoozi might post here and there, but it's also a project that's still in the works, the succession of the throne from Museveni, but I wanted to take us a little bit back more in time before we actually before we talk about what we know today. I wanted to take us back in time to the construction of Uganda and the division of all the different nations and how the British chose certain nations to represent not only the police but the military, and other nations to represent the elites, so the teachers and the educated masses, and how that affected especially the north to this day. And then we will get into what is happening today with Uganda being a military state and recruitment, and what that looks like even in within the unitary system that we have.
That's a very loaded question. It requires understanding the history of our country and how the colonizers were able to succeed in their that mission of colonizing this territory.
Mm,
You should remember that it was not easy for the British to take over this country. They had to fight, especially the well-organized kingdom states, or rather nations, and that is the nation of Buganda and the nation of Bunyoro.
mm,
They had to fight. Although the British can claim that they succeeded or they won the colonial war, but they did not win the minds of the people. It was because the people didn't have superior weapons the way the British came with superior weapons. And also they brought in um, Sudanese mercenaries
mm,
whom we now refer to as the Nubians. But I doubt if they really recruited them directly from the area which we know as Nuba, which is northern Sudan. In any case, there was that feeling that it is easy to use Nilotic tribes to maintain a colonial grip on this territory. And the British, as you know, they did not trust
mm,
the Baganda or Banyoro, or I would say the Bantu group, because they knew that even if they defeated them, they did not win their minds. So you could not make them have access to the firepower which the colonial regime was going to establish in terms of the King's African Rifle, the military, and the police.
mm,
They created these pseudo or this deceitful concepts that to be a policeman you have to be tall, skinny,
mm,
you know, which is the definition of what you would expect out of our Nilotic brothers in the north.
mm,
But if that is the standard of who should be a policeman, then are you telling me that Vietnamese are recruiting Nilotics from Africa to be policemen in Vietnam? Because they are all short people.
yeah.
You know, it just tells you that these guys were very, very deceitful, but they were very
Mm,
tactful in whatever they did. So, that being what it is, we have lived with that illusion for many years. Now
mm,
it is almost being destroyed by its own weight.
mm. And I think that brings me to the next question, where we have Uganda as a country, and it was built. Part of Uganda was built off of that backbone of force and military, because the British did not take over or create Uganda peacefully. Even after they brought Uganda together, they were still fighting resistance in within Uganda for a long period of time, with the Lamogi rebellion still happening. Kabalega was still fighting for a good period of time until he was injured. So even when Uganda was brought together as one, Uganda wasn't yet together as one and had to be built on a military base. And now we see presidencies where we have remained a military state. So it has become whereby the state, in order to hold people of all these different nations as one, it has the military has been used as what brings people together as one, or what polices. If I use the word policing. So I wanted to look at where we are at today with politically. There is acknowledgement of our political leaders. We can see where we're going. They all still remains serving in the same government. We can understand Uganda's state being a nation that has been captured militarily. But then I wanted to look at what's been happening recently with the upsurge and the I want us to, we're going to watch a few videos and a few things I want us to talk about. There has been people being given new positions in the military. There's been more of a drive and a push for recruitment, and there has been salary increment has been promised, but this only applies for those ones who are within the urban center of Kampala, and it doesn't resound outside of Kampala. So I want us to look at, why does Uganda, the nation that it is today, with what I've said, us being a militarily occupied country, why do we need to recruit more military? Why are we giving more money to military? Why are we why are we giving more cadet titles to to new individuals? But before we get into that, we'll watch the first video, and this is going to be this was Museveni on Friday, giving out new, titles to members of the military, the new ones that have been given honors. The producer can please help us play that video.
Now we are going to have special recruitment. The special recruitment will be for the Air Force, drivers and mechanics, and medical personnel. General recruitment is countrywide. Every district or every region has been given a quota based on the size of its population. Those bidding to get into the Air Force will be 30th June and 1st July. And those medical personnel will also come on 30th June and 1st July. Where will it be? Kololo ceremonial grounds. Now, for the drivers and mechanics, we'll also be making a special recruitment on the 30th of June and 1st of July. But where will it be? Gaddafi Barracks in Jinja. You have to be an adult Ugandan, female or male. And so the ages we are taking are 18 to 30. And then we need a letter stamped and endorsed by the LC1 and the DISO. You have to be UAC, which is S4 or its equivalent. There are some certificates that are equated to S4. So it's S4 or its equivalent and anything above S4.
So, Senior, I think I just have one question in regards to this. I wanted to hear your opinion about this because this happened this year. When he talks about July, this is just 2 months ago. Uh, what is your opinion on now the push to recruit people into the army or into military service, given the reputation we already have as a nation in military occupancy?
Well, that's a very good question. First, let me lay the foundation on this issue.
Mm,
Whenever you have a regime that
mm,
is forcing itself on a country or onto a country, whether it's a
mm,
colonial regime or a dictatorial regime like the one we have in Uganda.
mm,
And the Uganda one is not only dictatorial, it's an invasion, a
mm,
regime of invaders, dictatorial, and a military regime. You do not hear them talk about anything to do with the nation building, to do with the services. You only hear something to do with military expansion, military
mm,
expenditure, and the killing anybody who stands in their way. Those are the two areas of conversation they will engage in. Now, this man has announced that they are going to do recruitment for the Air Force, military drivers and mechanics, and medical.
mm,
Okay? Now, when you look at those areas, first of all, we have already known that they have been busing in people from Rwanda and Eastern Congo into different areas of Uganda, and they recruit them into this new drive as if they are recruited, let's say, from Umbare, and they will say, we recruited 50 people from Umbare. But you ask them, are they really natives of Umbare? No, they were busting from Rwanda and from Congo. They did the same thing in Masaka. They did the same thing in Hoima. They did the same thing in Kitigum. They were not recruiting indigenous people of those areas. And that's a fact. They cannot run away from it. We know it already, and everybody knows it. The second thing is, if you tell me that you are looking for medical recruits, and I know the military has a medical department, if you are looking for medical recruits, wouldn't you go to a nursing school
nursing
or
school or med school.
a medical school where they train physicians? But
Mm,
you are recruiting from this Jack, Harry, and Peter at Kororo. In other words, these guys are going to, let's say they were honest, they are recruiting indigenous people. These people are going to come from Kisenyi, from Nakawa, from Mpigi, and walk or hitchhike and get to Kororo airstrip or Kororo field and be recruited in the medical. What do you expect a man from Kivulu or from Katwe to be a medical trainee in the military? You should be looking for people at least to have an MD or RN or some kind of medical technician. I could come there, say, I know how to operate an X-ray or how to take blood pressure or how to operate an MRI machine. No, that's not what they are doing. I mean, it is so ridiculous that I think they're just helping us understand their low level of understanding what the world we are in. Then they say they are going to recruit drivers and mechanics at Ginger Barracks. Does that mean that only at Ginger Barracks is where you can find a driver and a mechanic? You can't find a mechanic or a driver in Hoima or Masindi or Fort Potro or Arua? or even Kumi. No, it's so ridiculous that I don't even know what to call it.
It already it already shows that because they have provided no services and no avenues to even support their own recruitment. But additionally, I want us to watch then this next video because again, it's on that question of we're already a nation that has been captured in militancy, but we bath and shower in militancy every time. And this is going to be, this is a video of Museveni giving out new big titles to a couple of new people in the military. And I think this happened on, I'm sure this was on Friday, on the 3rd of September. If the producer could please help us play that video.
I want to congratulate the specialists, the ones who have now been commissioned, and also congratulate the Air Force cadets. All of you, congratulations. I thank the teachers, and I thank the parents of our wananchi. You are here to defend the wananchi, to defend the legitimate interests of the wananchi against the legitimate interests. Army is primarily about fighting. So when you join the army, you must be eager. When there is fighting, you must be eager to go there. Don't be afflicted by the disease of headquarterism.
The President of the Republic of Uganda, the dear parents, we are all happy to see a very smart UPDF, especially the cadets in front of us. Present to you 297 officer cadets altogether. Among these cadets, 58 are from the Air Force, 35 from the Special Forces Command, and 204 from the Land Forces, and that's fulfilling of the pre-service training of the academy.
The foundation of UPDF is anchored on discipline, service with honor and dedication. Live up the UPDF values and attributes.
What I found very interesting about that video is only 4 were attributed to the land forces. The others were either with the Air Force or the SFC. So it brings me to another question because I think today's program, I want all of us as an audience to actually see that we're going to have to go through the military itself in order to liberate ourselves to a certain extent, if it makes sense, because it's being placed in a position where it's there to safe keep all the work that Museveni has already done in terms of making sure that this country or Uganda for what it is not running as it should. Then, Senior, I think now my question for you is at this point in time, whereby if we look at the context, 2021 elections just ended just a year ago. A lot of people were killed and injured and hurt by SFCs, the special forces. There has been no accountability, nothing to come out. And we don't know, there is not a lot of talk and there is not a lot of hope in even an upcoming election where the political ball is going. And when we look at now the conditions, this high militancy of getting people into the Air Force. Are we, and also putting in context that Uganda exports a lot of military manpower, not only to countries around us in Africa, but all the way in whenever the US needs people in Afghanistan or in Iran or in Iraq, we have contributed and sent our troops over. What should we, as us the masses, because Museveni is saying this military is to protect Wananchi, but it's like they're strategically being put to avoid Wananchi from rising up to a certain extent. What should we prepare ourselves of when we clash with the military, per se, the way how it's set up in Uganda today?
Well, it's very interesting, Desire, to listen to Museveni's speech. He said legitimate wananchi, which is a Swahili word, legitimate citizens. I want to know, are there legitimate citizens and non-legitimate citizens? Remember in the other so-called apology meeting he had in Luwero, he said old, single, and old Bulemezi. Museveni does not make mistakes when he's talking in such situations. Every word has a meaning. Who are the legitimate citizens? If you look at the line of people who were sitting there in front of him, they were all Batusi men as military top brass. Okay? We now know that the so-called UPDF invasion of Congo, which unfortunately was supported by some powerful international countries like the United States, they purported to be invading Congo because there is ADF. But we have already explained that there is a new ADF which is commanded by Kagame. The old ADF is already gone. Fini. Okay? What they have done in that so-called invasion, it has gone with the two purposes: to kill indigenous Ugandans in UPDF, reduce their number to the point that there will not be any possibility of indigenous Ugandan soldiers rising up to challenge the brutal dictatorship of Museveni and his invading comrades from Rwanda, the Batusi. Two is to wipe out the native people of North Kivu, particularly the Nandis, so that they can create room for Tutsis to move in from Rwanda and occupy that territory, which they are doing, by the way. It's not they are going to do it. They have already started doing it. It is genocide in Eastern Congo, killing the Nandi population so that they can depopulate that territory with the Batusi, and that's going on. Okay, now after having reduced the indigenous Ugandans from UPDF, that is the drive behind this plan of recruiting new people to fill in the manpower needed. As Museveni has said, you guys joining the military, you know you are going to fight. In other words, he's telling them, it is going to happen. You are going to be deployed into fighting to protect legitimate wananchi or legitimate citizens, which means those I have classified as the right citizens, and any of the other people who are not, according to his definition, are not the right citizens, shoot and kill. That's the order. So you can see Museveni has not abandoned his plan of establishing a dynasty dominated by him and his son and maybe his grandson. If you, the people of Uganda, just sit on your fat behind and do nothing.
And I think that's why today we wanted people to see that this is actually being put in action in real time. This happened on Friday. He said this on Friday. So if we're wasting time talking about, getting international support and trying to make sure that the international world understands our pain. Museveni is moving by the gun and very fast. So I'd like to ask the producer to play our next video as well. And then we're going to look at what's happening in there. All this content is from 2 months ago to a month ago. What's been happening in the military or with the SFC.
Government is set to revise the salaries of Uganda People's Defence Forces soldiers at all ranks according to reliable sources. The highly placed source at the Ministry of Defence intimated that the structure has been prepared for quite some time before presenting it to the army structures for vetoing and adoption. We have more. TV Africa has learned that according to the new salary structure, the least paid soldier at the rank of private will now earn shillings 1.5 million, and this is expected to go upwards depending on the ranks. It is said that government realized the poor pay for UPDF soldiers, with many earning below shillings 500,000, prompting a bumper package. The new salary structure will see a captain earn shillings 1.5 million, whereas the rest of the ranks between private and captain will also be paid within the bracket. Currently, a private earns less than 350,000, while a captain has been earning shillings 670,000. The other Ugandan army ranks between private and captain include Lance Corporal, currently earns shillings 310,000, Corporal shillings 314,000, Sergeant shillings 321,000, Staff Sergeant shillings 341,000, Warrant Officer 1 shillings 400,000, Warrant Officer 2 shillings 450,000, Second Lieutenant shillings 520,000, and Lieutenant 600,000. The report also suggests that ranks Major to Brigadier will also get a salary increment to at least shillings 10 million for the highest ranked, down from about shillings 2 million. Also proposed is the increment in the salaries of the generals from about shillings 4 million to shillings 15 million.
There have also been increments. So there seems to be an incentivization for people to even join with the increases of salary with this budget that did not make sense. A part of that budget was also increasing the salary of UPDF, which I find very interesting that the military, members of the military are getting salary increase, but the police gets nothing. And it's a very interesting dynamic that this government has chosen to play out in how they treat the police versus the military.
Yes, Desire, it is self-evident the military is dominated by his recruits from Rwanda and Eastern Congo, with a few indigenous Ugandans there, but the bulk of the recruits are from there. Now, the department, the police department in Uganda, if it was in terms of medical services here in these countries, you would say it is an intensive care unit because there is virtually no police department in Uganda. Those who were caught up in that department have been left out there to suffer the fate of time and weather. The work of the police is being carried out by SFC, the Special Force, which is 99% Tutsis. And those are taken care of very well. But the regular so-called police is virtually dead. Period. This is where you're going to, the regular police is where you're going to find the indigenous Ugandans, the Itesot, the Langis, the Achoris, the Lugubaras, Baganda, Basoga, you name it, Banyoro. Yeah, but as far as Museveni is concerned, to hell with them. he would wish them dead anyway. And you're going to find them virtually hanging around just like a chameleon on a tree. I was talking to somebody 2 days ago, to be exact, and was telling me, I'm not going to say the name to reveal that person's name, and was telling me of a police station, an outpost police station, somewhere there on the road between Masaka and Mutukula at the border. And this person saw a policeman, and they told this person that that is a police post in this area. When this person went there, he found this poor policeman sitting on a stool under a mango tree with his gun, just sitting there under a mango tree on a stool, not a chair. And that is a police station. And that poor guy sitting there with his gun and the uniform is depending upon people to give him something to eat or drink. That's the Uganda policeman. That's not what you're going to see with an SFC constable or sergeant who will probably come in a beautiful fancy car, dressed up well, he eats well, sleeps in a nice building. And I didn't ask this person, where does that poor policeman sleep? Probably he's one of those, or obviously he's one of those sleeping in those tin cans we saw last Thursday. That's the Uganda police. Do you expect that kind of a person to do any policing job? Heck no. By the way, what is the policing job in Uganda? The policing job is carried out by SFC guys, pumping tear gas in your face, whipping you up with a stick, because they walk with a gun and a stick, and whipping you up. As one time we saw a poor old woman who was just walking her way, and this guy started whipping the hell out of her. And that's what Museveni's regime is to the population. So any Ugandan, for that matter, who thinks that you're going to get sympathy from the outside world, I'd say, if you are dreaming, get a second blanket and continue sleeping, because you need to cover up yourself very well and continue snoring and sleeping.
And I wanted us to address this so that we understand that even police in Uganda doesn't exist. What our problems are is the military and the Special Forces Command, because those have been constructed, manufactured, made by this regime to serve them. When Etumene says every year they recruited, that's what he's referring to. But before we go any further, I'll ask the producer to play the next video just to show the contrast of housing, because we're going to now look into housing, what the SFC housing looks like, and then we all can imagine what regular police housing looks like as we dive into this a bit more. I'll ask the producer to please play that next.
Each housing unit commissioned by General Yoweri Museveni has 3 bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen and store, and cost government of Uganda shilling 71 million. According to President Museveni, it wouldn't have been possible to defend the country with no or little pay for the UPDF until now that the NRM government has got money to enhance their salaries to a tune of over 1 million shillings.
Otherwise, we would not have been able to defend Uganda if we had to say houses first. Houses first, salaries first. You wouldn't. There was no money. So that's what we did. And I want to thank all the officers and all the NCOs and all the militants of NRA, of UPDF, of FORNASA for accepting that strategy of Kamwe Kamu Gwe Muganda.
General Museveni said the reason why former African armies failed to defend themselves is because they prioritized salaries and good life.
Now, if that time we had said we must pay ourselves, because that's what the problem of Amin's army and these African armies. If that, because when we fought with Idi Amin had an army of 20,000. We came with an army of 54,000 from Tanzania. He couldn't fight us because he had made the mistake of paying high salaries to soldiers. Each one had a car, private car. They started with building barracks. They had no weapons.
The president was happy about the decision of the SFC engineering unit to use direct labor, which is cheap, while undertaking construction of the housing units.
Save on our operations and put the money on the housing, but use labor, direct labor.
He urged the SFC construction unit to continue with the good work.
These Chinese companies you see here, Railway 18, I don't know what, these were former government companies and army companies. So continue, don't waste time with now private, what, no. Let's look for money for materials. The 60 billion we get, if 100 billion, when we get it, it should all be to buy materials and we'll do the building ourselves.
Constructing these houses using our own engineers gives us a lot of advantages. First of all, we save a lot of money.
To the Chief of Defense Forces, General Wilson Mbasumbadi, this is as a result of the 2008 needs assessment carried out by the Ministry of Defense and Veteran Affairs, adding that the housing units will spur togetherness in the army, among other benefits.
Because most of the soldiers lived in the famous Mama Ingia Pole, while others opted to rent in very cheap slums, which not only compromised command and control, but also made these soldiers very vulnerable as far as their security is concerned. Apart from the advantage of command and control, soldiers staying together also improves esprit de corps, the sense of belongingness, but it also helps them benefit from the common user facilities that we always find in the barracks.
The Commander, Special Forces Command, Brigadier General Felix Busizori, briefed President Museveni on how far the unit has gone in as far as improving accommodation for the soldiers.
So when we completed the construction of these houses, we started on the construction of 80 housing units in Kigungu, in Makajo and Rehenjere, and right now they are at roofing stage. So we are also about to complete the Health Center 3 in Rinyo Barracks here, in addition to the health centers that we have, and it can admit 20 people.
He added that installation of a brick making machine is complete to reduce on the construction costs.
We have finalized the installation of a block making machine, and it has started the production. And this will significantly reduce the cost of construction. Your Excellency, sir, the machine can make 500 blocks per hour, and it's able to do hollow blocks, solid blocks, and pavers. Your Excellency, sir, we do all this using our own labor.
For years since its formation, The Uganda People's Defense Forces UPDF has improvised for its soldiers who have prioritized the country's peace and security against their own welfare. Despite the poor remuneration, the UPDF remains one of the most popular institutions, attracting professionals in their ranks, mainly because of its professional training and discipline. Bernard Yiga, UBC News.
I can't believe the lies that Ugandan journalists have to say on national TV for no reason. There was no need for him to lie that a lot of people are attracted to joining the UPDF from different ranks. And it's the most attractive institution to join in Uganda. That was a lie that there was no need to say. But that's a side note. Senior Chitu, you've seen the houses, because I really think us Ugandans don't believe Bagamba, like in Uganda they say amasogo Muganda galabira mu ngalo. We really don't believe what's happening behind closed doors till someone really brings and shows it to you out front. We were taking I fail to understand how we were taking off a dictator, but this dictator is so comfortable. He's creating a whole other dynasty with a military power behind it. Have you seen the houses, how they're neatly constructed, how they're segmented off? They're for the SFC, they're not for anyone else. They're for the SFC. And the difference between this and the usual military barracks that we're accustomed to seeing. There's a
Well,
striking difference. No, sorry, go ahead, Senior.
yeah, you are absolutely correct. There is a striking difference. It is shocking, and as the Americans would say, jaw dropping when you look at that presentation in those pictures. In the first place, SFC is not an official military wing within the Uganda military establishment as established by the Constitution and the Parliament. It is a private army of Yoweri Museveni and his family for the purpose of protecting and maintaining him in power and protecting his family members and protecting their root. That's their job. But look at the way they have been elevated to the point of even being, to quote Machiavelli's book, The Prince, that all comrades are equal, but some are more equal. These are the comrades who are more equal. To put it in layman's language, these are the favored kids in uniform, even though they are illegitimate kids. These are the favored kids. They are ushered with everything fancy, better salaries, better housing, better equipment, better training. In fact, someone told me, I don't know whether this is true, but I'm going to say it anyway, that the SFC soldier is better trained than UPDF soldier. Well, one of the things that we know is they are better armed than UPDF. As we said, there is no police in Uganda. So the SFC has now been expanded to take over whatever job the police would be doing. The job of the police is protect lives and property and maintain law and order. The SFC is doing the reverse. They do not protect lives, they do not protect property, they don't maintain law and order. As a matter of fact, they have been implicated over and over in all land grabbing crimes, in killing innocent people, in kidnapping innocent people, in tear gassing and shooting live bullets to people especially those of the opposition, and selectively picking up the cadres of opposition parties. So you can see why Museveni is ushering all these benefits to them, because they are the whole purpose of his survival as a dictator in Uganda.
Uganda that are receiving special training. Those are the ones that are specifically trained by Africa. And SFC members receive special training. They are not just regular dandy trained. You can imagine our UPDF policemen on for example, the example you gave, Senior, he's seated on a stool underneath the tree with an AK-47, and that's the police station. These are people who are armed with new rifles. They're given all the body armor. It's. I also wanted us to touch upon, because I think for us to fully then understand if the case is that now we actually have uh, first of all, SFC being unconstitutional, but also the Ugandan military in general serving to preserve and to actually uplift and make sure that status quo continues. We must prepare ourselves as the masses and actually stop playing about with what is happening. When we even talk about, because every time we talk about police brutality and Uganda, we say, oh, stop police brutality, stop police violence. But we're not talking about the depth of which it is. We have criminals that are not even legitimate to be, they are not, it's an illegitimate police force that is killing citizens, if that makes sense. How do we start to shape ourselves to have those conversations in that way instead of the other way round where we are victims to police? Of course, that does happen, but also it's an understanding of this is not even a legitimate police force. It's already criminals committing more crimes.
Well, yes, I think we have to learn a new language. We shouldn't call them police brutality, because there is no
Mm,
police in Uganda. We
yeah.
should call it military brutality, because these hooligans who are shooting us and beating our people and killing and stealing our land and uh, assisting in every crime there is in the country, these are SFC guys. And now what we are seeing is that Museveni is behaving precisely like a python. Excuse me. They are squeezing slowly but steadily up to the last point when it will be time to swallow the carcass. This is all in preparation for Muhoozi to take over, because they know that the so-called opposition politicians are not going to stand in their way. When they incorporated Mao recently from the Democratic Party into the government, we knew that the job is done. They always suspected the northern tribesmen, particularly the Achoris, to be probably the backbone of any violent resistance to the Muhoozi project. Now, they are using their own people, like Mao, Norbert Mao, and others, to silence the northern connection. They have retired so many former soldiers in the UPDF, and they have killed so many former UPDF foot soldiers, to the point that there is going to be no resistance from the so-called military establishment. Now, if you look at the SFC, which has been expanded exponentially, and the way they have reduced the strength and the presence of indigenous Ugandans in UPDF. Tomorrow, a declaration of Muhoozi as president is going to be just like changing cups of coffee or tea. They'll just declare it, and there is going to be nobody, because don't expect these so-called opposition politicians who are busy dancing and singing and enjoying a good life. Don't expect anything out of them. Don't expect anything out of the religious leaders we have in the country to stand up and advocate for the good of their own citizens. No, because a good many of them have been bought, others have been intimidated, and they're silent. And a few ones who could have stood up and said, hell no, they are 6 foot under. So you can see Museveni is clearing the ground for his son's takeover. As someone said, he's a drunkard son. That's not my word, because I've never sat down with him and drink a beer or so. But that's what people say. And I'm just quoting from the rest of the conversations I hear from Ugandans. So we are going to have this transition take place very smoothly without any opposition from anybody, because Museveni has cleared the groundwork from the military point of view to the political point of view to the religious point of view. And by the way, would you expect a word from any of our so-called cultural leaders? A good many of them are fighting for their lives. Do you expect them to say anything? Heck no. It is only us who have the liberty of standing here and talk about it. And not only that, maybe we are the only ones who still have the brains to do analytical or critical thinking, which unfortunately is not coming out of our brothers and sisters inside Uganda. I don't understand why.
And this one is also like a by the way question, but additional to what you've been saying, when you look at that housing, there is a Museveni does this thing where he historicizes, he makes his journey Ugandan history by force. Those houses are named Frelimo, Fronasa. there is he makes his journey, retells it as a history of the nation. So there's what is it he called it? There is an ideology that they ought to believe that even when he thanks, he said he wanted to thank people in the NRA, for NASA, for Limo, and the UPDF who fought. It's this belief that they're the only ones who fought. And this is just maybe an additional comment to what you were saying, that these are the grounds and the seeds that have been laid. Like, he's not just laying them today or yesterday, he's been doing this over time. And now we're seeing them come to life, sprout to life. These are whole buildings for SFC members to take over. We've seen SFC members become more and bigger in numbers, and their projects become bigger and more detrimental. The latest, I like to remind us Ugandans, the latest project that SFC participated in was November. And that came with killing of a number of Ugandans we don't even remember. When they shut down November protests all over Uganda. So that's the latest project SFC was in openly. But they have done so. No, not even that's the latest one. They are all the way up north as well in Karamoja. So there's a lot to be said about SFC, but there's also a lot to be said about how we are responding to SFC in general and the military state in Uganda and how we talk about it. Because if we keep on saying police brutality, it doesn't even address the problem that Ugandans are facing. But senior, for our last one, for our last slide, I wanted us to look at a compare contrast, and I'll ask the producer to play this video. And this is going to show housing for regular police, what that looks like, and what those conditions are like for regular police that Museveni does not care about.
The Mbale Barrack houses 934 police officers with at least 175 children and relatives. There are the odd line houses constructed in 1954 and the new line buildings of 1964. Tiles falling off the roofs, peeling ceilings, cracks running through the walls, broken doors and windows, and raw sewage. This is the state of habitation for the police staff. The committee members were horrified by what they saw.
No. This is. I have no words. This is terrible. These are like animals living in here, and these are people who are protecting life and property of Ugandans.
It is highly deplorable. We do not know where does the police money go. Almost a full trillion. Look at the defunct buildings. Those are would be defunct. We would leave them.
Also for us, being one of the biggest barracks, and with the growing security threats, the whole police barracks is for us. Anybody can pass anywhere. There is need for fencing there.
Rose Nyachikongoro, the chairperson of the committee, said the houses should be demolished and better structures put up.
Sometimes we condemn police for nothing. You cannot stay in such houses which are dilapidated, which should be completely put down. And we say that we are promoting our police. The welfare of the police officers should be looked into. We are recruiting qualified police officers, young men and women who are graduates, who have been brought up in very good environments, and you bring them in dilapidated buildings. We have met with one girl whose building collapsed on her.
Elgon Region Police spokesperson Rogers Taitika says renovation on houses in the new line has started, but they are waiting for more funding to continue.
Of course, it's on record that they constructed some time back, and you expect something that has been there for some time to have challenges. So those are the challenges. Of course, the authority, our supervisors from the headquarters, seeing to it that they are putting things right, and as I speak now, the renovation of some housing units is ongoing, and so far 33 have been renovated. We are remaining with a total of 16, which we expect also to be renovated when the fund.
In the last financial year, police was set to resume construction of officers' housing units after being allocated shillings 292.
Welcome back from that video. But the fact that the houses we saw previously are not occupied, and these dilapidated houses are actually being occupied by people who are it, so senior, what do you think of the compare contrast of the two different living conditions that have been established for both parties that are actually working for the state as a arm of the state?
Well, after seeing that picture over and over and listening to that wonderful officer who is posing as a spokesman for the police department,
Yeah.
I started questioning whether my knowledge of the English language is deficient. So I reached for my dictionary. By the way, it is right here with me. I reached for my dictionary just to find out what is the actual meaning of the word renovation. When I found the definition of the word renovation, I said, oh, I thought I was, my English was poor. How could you call that renovation? What are you renovating right there? Honestly, even if you have drunk 10 bottles of waragi, you could come out with a better sentence. Now, that aside, I wanted to say something about Museveni trying to rewrite history, that the history of Uganda is starting with his Fronasha and all that stuff. It is very typical of dictators who take over countries. One of the big things they do is trying to rewrite the history of a country. Those of you who have studied world history, you are going to find that in Turkey, even the name Turkey starts with the man who is called Ataturk. I think I'm pronouncing it right. Those who know better will help me. Ataturk established the new Turkey that we see today. But many of you, especially those who are students of theology and history, will tell me that there was a country long before even Jesus. And we have, through the history of Christianity, you can check on the travels of St. Paul and others. You're going to see that they went to places which now is Turkey. There are many, many religious stories that took place in places which are present-day Turkey. But they didn't call it Turkey. When Ataturk took over, he used his name and named it Turkey. That's what dictators do. And by the way, he was nothing short of being a dictator. Museveni is trying to make us feel like, oh, this is Uganda started with him coming out of Tanzania with the Tanzania military taking over after Idi Amin, and anything below that is not Uganda. This is why he is using these words, legitimate citizens, as being different from those who are indigenous Ugandans. This is why he used those words, New Bulemezi County, New Single, because if you go there now and you look for those indigenous Ugandans who were the population of that territory, they were all killed by Museveni and his invading Tutsis. It is for that reason you are going to find that they own square miles of land. Museveni, Kaihura, Salim Saleh, Paul Kagame included, they own square miles of land in this territory. You ask yourself, did you really find that area completely empty and you just took over? No, they killed the natives and they took over the land. This is what Uganda is faced with today. Now he's lying to you that that's why I said, I don't understand whether they know the meaning of the word renovation. Are you renovating these buildings? As one woman said, these should be totally demolished and the new ones built. But they are not going to do that. Instead, they are building wonderful houses, as we have seen in these pictures, for their Batusi SFC soldiers, and forget the Ugandans who were supposed to live in these kind of dilapidated places that are not even fit for pigs.
And one of the interesting things that also the spokesperson said, that he also had the audacity to say there ought to be problems with things that were built a long time ago, but these are buildings that were built in 1964. In 2022, that's more than decades have passed. But as we go towards the end of our program today, Senior, I wanted us to take just a short little break, and then we
Yes.
come back with our closing statements for today, and
Okay.
and then we will continue from there.
Why do we need the federal system of governance in Uganda? And what is federalism? Federal is a system of governance. It's not about getting rid of the central government. It's not about party politics. It's not about multi-partisan or absence of it. It's not about religious differences. It's not about tribalism. It is not for the benefit of Buganda alone. It's not about monarchism. It's not about land or dispossessing people from land. It is not about supremacy of one region over another or others. It's about helping the central government to provide services more efficiently and provide more effective development to the people. It's about sharing power and responsibilities between the central government and regional governments. Federalism is about providing more prosperity, more wealth, more feeling of belonging and participation in governance by marginalized and non-marginalized people. The federal system of government minimizes possibilities of waging war against the central government. It minimizes internal acts of terrorism and discontent against the central government. It has inbuilt safeguards that ensure uniform growth for all regions of the country, and additional measures to make sure that the marginalized or less developed regions of the country can catch up through the system of equalization grants and affirmative action programs. This ensures that the regions with greater income and development contribute a percentage of their earnings to the developed areas which may be less developed. It should be noted that federalism, though different from decentralization, does not contradict or exclude decentralization. The two systems can and should coexist and complement each other at the regional level. Advocating federal does not mean or seek to get rid of decentralization from regional tier, nor does it mean getting rid of district MPs, LC leaders, or other regional government officials. To learn more about federalism, register and join UFCC at www.ufcc.uk.
Welcome back from that short break. Today we're not going to be here for long as per usual, and apologies, we're not going to be able to take any questions from you lot, but we would like now to come in with our closing statements. Senior, I'd like to invite you to please say your closing remarks in regards to what we've been talking about, and I will do the same as well right after you.
Thank you very much, Desire. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching us and listening to our presentation of today. I sincerely hope that you have been able to pick up something which you can take home and share with other people, because there is no point getting to know something and not share it with your fellow Ugandans. We all need to know what is going on within our country and around us, and be able to understand the comparisons we have presented to you today, especially the way these Batusi in SFC are treating themselves and the way they are treating you, the indigenous Ugandans, in the police service. I hope that this will awake your brains, your hearts, and your conscience, and be able to do the appropriate thing, because without you, without taking action, without doing the appropriate thing, we are going to remain in this situation of lamenting over and over without finding a solution. Thank you very much for listening and watching our presentation today. Hope to see you again next time with another program of brain tickling events.
Thank you so much, Senior. I'd like to thank everyone who's been with us from where we started to where we're at now. And, if you've stayed with us throughout the show, but also maybe a highlight for today is for us to understand that the villain themselves or our biggest enemy continues to freely be able to make moves within the country and build a legacy for himself within the country. And that being said, we should also be able to make counter moves and organize against Museveni, because Museveni cannot continue to have the free will and not feel the pressure and continue to build housing for his private military and do all these things he wants to do without us applying pressure. So let us make sure that there is no rest for even him himself. If the country is not restful enough for even us ourselves, he does not need to have this much free will him himself as well. But hopefully it's been some things that we have taken note of and will continue to look at, and looking at Uganda's military, see how it grows and how it's going to soar up to the very end, because we all know we must go through that state. It would come down to also a military confrontation. Let us stay keen of those things. But other than that, I want to thank you all. And until the next Sunday, and we will come with a different topic, different time. And hopefully, then, depending on when that time does come, we'll run a longer program and answer your questions and listen to your comments. Apologies because we can't do that today, but we promise to then revive that and start doing that again the next coming week. But with that being said, I want to wish you all a good afternoon, a good morning, a good evening, and thank you to the producer and the team for helping us be here today. Akume.
On his arrival in Britain, Sir Edward endorsed the use of further violence by his 2 million Baganda subjects to oppose any attempts by you or your government to make Uganda a republic. Do you in fact anticipate more violence from Sir Edward's supporters in Uganda?
Whatever comes, we will deal with them.
And to continue using military force to govern Uganda when the entire kingdom is reportedly antagonistic to your rule?
There is no evidence that Uganda is antagonistic to the government's aims and objectives. There is no evidence whatsoever.
You are the former Prime Minister, sir.
That's right.
I see.
Yes.
Why were you put in prison in the first place, sir?
When?
Why were you put in prison in the first place?
Well, I don't know. They said that I was subversive.
Yes.
I organized the party to kill the ex-president.
Yes.
All these things which were false.
Yes.
That's why I was taken in.
Were you put on trial in court?
No.
No trial?
Every one of us, no. There was no trial.
No trial at all? You were Prime Minister at the time, were you?
No.
That
I
was
wasn't.
before that?
Yes.
How did you feel, sir, when you heard about the coup and...
Oh, well, you can guess what it was. You can guess what it was.
You're obviously very happy.
Yes, I'm very happy. Very, very happy.
Yes.
I think the whole country is very happy.
Idi Amin, one of the most colorful and outrageous rulers in the world today. With a brilliant understanding of power, he rules Uganda by a simple yet effective method. He has wiped out all opposition. There's a certain charm to the man. Yet the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court was dragged from the bench and murdered by Amin's army. Thousands have fled into exile. And up to 80,000 have been murdered.
Tell
us about the killings that he did as far as specific people that he decided to kill. There were the Chief Justice, the Archbishop, the central bank president. Was this a calculated move on his part?
Oh, yes, very much calculated. These were people that he felt somewhat threatened by. They were members of the elite, highly educated, unlike him, and potential leaders of opposition. He didn't do the killings himself. He had goon squads that would do these things for him. Sometimes they did it without his knowledge, he says, but I doubt that. I'm sure in every case it was cleared with him before it happened. The most egregious case was Ben Kiwanuka. He was a very prominent lawyer and had been leader of the Democratic Party, which was the Catholic Party in Uganda, which is one of the principal kingdoms of the old Uganda. So he was a very prominent person. He'd been put in prison by Milton Obote, Amin's predecessor, as a political prisoner. Amin let him out, appointed him Chief Justice. Some months later, he made a decision in favor of a British company whose property had been expropriated. This displeased Amin enormously because he didn't want to do things that were helpful to the British investor, obviously. So he sent a goon squad in. They went into that courtroom, dragged the man out in his robes, and murdered him outside his own courtroom. Now that sends a message to the whole populace that nobody is immune. You cross me and you're a goner.